Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this scrutiny meeting for July. The fire alarm procedures are as follows. If the fire alarm is activated, please vacate the offices down the main staircase opposite the lifts in the foyer. Assemble in Hawley Square on the green. Officers will assist you and advise you when it's deemed safe to return to the chamber. Would everyone please present, please ensure that their mobile phones are turned to silent and they are not used to make or receive phone calls while this meeting is in progress. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed for members of the public. The meeting will also be recorded and subsequently broadcast on the internet. Does anyone intend to film this meeting? That's a no, and we have no members of the public, so move on. I've had no requests to speak under 20.1 and no public speaking, so I'll move on to item 1, apologies for absence. I've had one apology, and that's from Councillor Green. Are there any other apologies? That's a no. Okay, item number 2, the declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? That's a no. Okay, moving on to item 3, the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of June 2025. To approve the minutes of the Overview and Scrutiny Panel meeting held on the 17th of June 2025, a copy is attached to the agenda pack. We've all had a look, I presume. Can I have a proposer? Councillor Britcher, and a seconder, Councillor Curry. Does everyone agree? Excellent, thank you. Moving on to item 4, which is the review of the Overview and Scrutiny Work Programme for 25-26. The members now identified and established a question for the next working party led by Councillor Green. Unfortunately, he's not here this evening. The first meeting has narrowed down the topic a bit. I'm going to ask Councillor Bright just to come in because she's a member of that and she's going to give us a little update.
Thank you, Chair. Yep, we've met twice now and we have now got a question. I haven't got the exact wording in front of me, but we decided that it would be something along the lines of is there sufficient joint working between Kent County Council, Thanet District Council and third-party providers to identify those residents suffering poverty and signposting them to support? We're thinking of... we're just in the process of coming up with a survey to share with officers to find out how they specifically deal with people that have fallen on hard times and how they help those residents. And also we were considering having a forum with stakeholders so we can actually have a really good discussion about where the gaps are really. Yeah, so that's it so far. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Joan. Members have any questions? Are we all happy with the work programme that we've got at the moment? Okay, can members note that report, please?
Councillor Davis was going to say something.
Councillor Davis.
I was just going to say how much I welcome what Councillor Bright said about stakeholders and outreach, because I think that's one of the great things with these working groups is it's an opportunity to engage meaningfully with the people that we represent. So good to hear that, and hopefully it will continue in a lot of these working groups. So, and I'd always encourage that community engagement. So.
Yeah, we've all been members of those scrutiny reviews, and we all know how valuable they are. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 5, the Public Sector Decarbonisation Fund Grant Award. Call on Andrea Plant to introduce that report.
Thank you, Chair. So this report invites members of the Overview and Scrutiny Panel to review and comment on a proposal that seeks Cabinet's permission to proceed with a procurement and award of building works contract. This is necessary to meet the funding requirements of the Public Sector Decarbonisation Scheme, which awarded a grant to the Council, and to utilise the Council's approved match fund contribution. This project involves installing energy efficiency measures at 4 sites: the Gateway, in Cecil Street, the Kent Innovation Centre, Ramsgate Leisure Centre and Hartsdown Leisure Centre. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. Members, any questions? Councillor Pope.
I'm not sure if I have to declare an interest. I manage a contract which your leisure are a subcontractor on, and they run the leisure centres.
That's noted. I think there's a tenuous link, but yeah, but that's noted. I think we've got to. Councillor Wing.
as a new user of the leisure centre since my dog passed, to fill my dog walking role, I'm really glad that the solar panels are going on the leisure centre, because I think it's going to be a massive saving, as we heard prior to that. And it's a really well-run leisure centre, so and really well used. So I'm really pleased to hear the same with Hartsdown. I think it's going to make a massive difference to reducing their energy bills.
Councillor Austin.
Yes, I just want to say that I think this is really welcome. It's excellent that the government is carrying on with the decarbonisation fund. There are various other grants that don't seem to be carrying on, but this one seems to be going strong, and that's brilliant, and really helps us to do what we need to be doing to meet our climate challenges. So, and also helps us with our budget. So great news, and thank you, Andrew, for the report.
Anybody else? Councillor Scobie.
Very supportive of this. I just have a question to make sure that we fully understood whether this changes any of the risks related to the buildings themselves. So it may just be worth, once this is approved, I'm sure it will be as part of the project, considering how putting solar panels on a public accessible roof may change the fire loading and the potential risk there, and maybe making some of the adaptations, because a lot of homeowners think that just putting solar panels on the roof has no impact on the risk of it, when it actually does, and it does create a liability for themselves, even if it is 15, 20 years in the future. People don't like thinking that long, but as a council we probably do need to, so just worth considering that.
So the installation and the full programme of works will be done under a risk assessment and a method statement, and the calculation of the weight loading for the solar panels is done taking into consideration the structural stability of the building and the weight bearing. So it's all part of the parcel of the works, yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, so we have a number of recommendations. I'm not going to read them all. If you can all have a look at on your screen, there's 5 recommendations. Do we all agree? Can I have a proposer and a seconder? Councillor Scobie, Councillor Pritchard. We all agree, yeah? Okay, excellent. Moving on to item number 6. The Royal Harbour car park. Oh yeah, hold on, we'll just get Katie back. Okay, moving on to item number 6, the Royal Harbour car park. Call on Andrew again.
Thank you, Chair. Me again. This second report now invites members of the Overview and Scrutiny Panel to review and comment on a proposal for Cabinet to approve the procurement and award of a building works contract. This contract is for essential external and internal redecoration and refurbishment of the stairways at the Royal Harbour car park in Leopold Street in Ramsgate. The estimated value of the works is circa £754,000, which makes this a key decision. The works included are essential external and internal, and are required to be completed prior to June 2026 due to legal notices that need to be issued in relation to the option to purchase the car park. Work is also limited by the weather and temperature conditions, which means working in the winter months is not feasible. So the time frame for the works may slightly change because we are currently in negotiations with the owners. So as of today, our deadline is still June 2026, but we are in the process of negotiating with the owners. We may have a little bit more leniency on those timelines, but as of today, it's still a deadline, a firm deadline of 2026. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Andrea. Members, I'm looking over there because I know this is your subject.
One of my specialist subjects, sadly. Great to see this happening. Can you just clarify? So we've finished the lift works over the autumn, and then in the spring, we're looking at this redecoration. That's my first question. I do have another one.
So at this point in time is procuring the works, so it will depend on the contractor that we find and the timescales they propose, and that's how we will score them, depending on their availability and timescales, but we will try and put it for sort of, not over the winter period, because we won't be finished procurement, but yeah, exactly.
So the second question is the scope of the works in terms of the geographical scope of the works. So there's the car park, there's the tunnels and all of that, and so on, the tunnel underneath the road and the steps up the other side, all of which are ours, and the ones on the other side haven't been decorated for many, many, many years. Is all of that going to be included, or is it just physically the car park space itself?
So this cabinet report is specifically just for the car park, the one that was built by the trust fund, the one that we are in the process of exercising an option to purchase. The tunnels, I know they've been highlighted to me. They have now they're under the same title deed, but not same part and parcel of the building. So they are owned by the council, and they've been corrected on a map which was wrongly iterated. The redecoration and cleaning of the tunnels have now been raised with our open spaces team, and they have re-added it to their cyclical program of works, and the first clean should have happened already a couple of weeks ago. They will be all part of the cyclical works.
Excellent.
Councillor Wing?
I'll just concentrate on the costing. So I think it's annual borrowing costs of 58,963. I think it's at 0.413. I mean, those costs need to be met. Can they be met in part or partly covered by the revenue from the car park? And also, are we looking at building in security for 24-hour use? Because there is a large number of residents who would quite happily lease a parking space if the site was secure and had 24-hour access, probably electric shutters on there, some sort of logging in. I don't know whether that's a plan for the future in order to increase the revenue that we take from that site.
Thanks, Chair. With regards to the 58,000 you're referring to, that is one of the alternative options. It's not the option that's actually being pursued. Whether it could or couldn't be covered from income is not the basis of this proposal. So the borrowing costs effectively net out in terms of the lease payment that we're paying. Okay. So what we're saying is we currently pay X for the lease, and under a borrowing arrangement we'll pay Y, and that is cheaper in the long run, significantly cheaper than if we continue to pay leases with inflation over that period of time.
Is that if the owners agree to sell it to us? And could there be an increase in cost if we improve the facility in purchase cost?
The option to purchase is not a permissive option. It's our say if we act on that, and this report is to enable us to do the works, which are a condition of us. So the owners don't have to agree to sell. They can't. It's an option that's already in the contract, so we are just exercising that option, and the works are needed to enable us to exercise that option.
Because we've got quite a long lease on it, haven't we?
We've got a very long leasehold on it.
The value doesn't change based on the works because it's based on the lease payment.
Yeah, so the option to purchase already stipulates the price we will pay for the building, which is based on the rental value, not the works.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks again, Andrea. The option to purchase that we've got and you're pursuing in terms of securing the freehold, is that in any way time limited or affected by, for example, a delay in procuring a contractor for this maintenance? Because I understand it's necessary to do the maintenance, or we're in breach, as it were. Is that a possibility, or are we sort of quite comfortable with where we are with those freehold negotiations? Because I'd hate for that to go wrong because of dynamics with this.
Yes, precisely. So those negotiations that are happening at the moment are very much based on this, and this will help us provide the evidence to the owners that we've got permission to procure the works are in the process of being done, therefore that breach will be mitigated. But yeah, the works are an essential part to the option to purchase. If we don't have the works, the owners could change their mind and say, actually, no, you can't exercise the option to purchase, and then becomes a bit of a legal fight, which we don't want to get into.
No, sorry, can I come? Yeah. That was exactly my worry, but you don't think it's not a fear at the moment as such with the way things are going, obviously.
Which is exactly why we're bringing this as a key decision, because it's so important. If we don't get the approval and then there are delays, then yeah, that option to purchase could be severely impacted.
Councillor Packman.
Yeah, thank you. So the contract's around 754,000. Have we thought about social value in this? Because I keep seeing contracts coming through over your scrutiny, and I keep mentioning social value, and I'm not seeing social value being kind of mentioned. And what I mean by social value, for those that aren't aware, is what are we getting back from this company that we're investing £754,000 of taxpayers' money to and that could clean the tunnels, for example, to save the cost of the waste management team. So what are we factoring social value in this to get kind of social impact?
So at this point in time, the contract is now not out for procurement, so we don't have a specific company in mind at all. It will be part of the specification of it. The cost that we have put in the report is the cost that we have in our PPM, which is the condition report that was done by an independent company that listed all the items that need to be repaired and maintained, and then put an estimate cost next to it. When we come to procurement, the evaluation of the procurement contract does take social value into account in certain parts, depending on the scoring matrix and sort of the weighting we give to that specific contract. The major part of it will be the exact technical spec of the company that we need to deliver the works, because there's lots of companies out there, but not necessarily the ones that we specifically need to be able to do the work on such specialist properties.
Yeah, no, I think from my perspective, it's around, we keep investing this money into buildings and car parks, which is fantastic because we need to do it. But what are we getting back as taxpayers? I know we're getting a car park and all that, but it's a lot of money that we're investing. So while they're there, they could be fixing up little things that are around the car park. We've mentioned other areas, by Councillor Austin and Councillor Wing, around the kind of the exterior of the car park and the tunnels. But yet we're relying on another department of Thanet Council to pay for it. Actually, we should be saying to the contract, while you're there, there's a bit of social value, can you pick it up?
I think that's the point that Andrea was trying to make. We haven't actually gone out to procurement yet. As part of the procurement, we can stipulate, are there any added value items that you can do for us? We're not at that stage at the moment, so you're saying, what are they doing for us? We're not at a stage, we haven't actually gone out to the market, so we couldn't tell you what they're doing. What we could do is look at what opportunities there are as part of that actual procurement.
Yeah, and that's the point I think I was trying to make, is it's great that it's on your radar. So thank you.
Anybody else? All done? Okay, so some recommendations in front of you. I'm not going to read them all out because it's quite long. Do we all agree with those? A proposer for those. Councillor Davis and Councillor Austin's going to second them. And do we all agree with those? Okay, perfect. Thanks, Andrea. Okay, moving on to item number 7, which is the proposed use of hydro-treated vegetable oil, HVO fuel. Call on Matt Elmer.
Thank you, Chair. This report proposes changing the primary fuel for the Council from standard diesel to hydro-treated vegetable oil, or HVO fuel. HVO is a fuel made of waste material from agriculture. It is this process that helps reduce the associated carbon emissions by up to 90%. The fuel itself is completely interchangeable and mixable with standard diesel. No engine modifications are required, and warranties and insurances are not affected by the change in fuel type. While the aspiration of TDC is to move towards battery-powered zero-emission vehicles, where this is not currently possible, the move to HVO will be used as a transitional fuel type. To inform this recommendation, or these recommendations, a live trial was undertaken by the cleansing department. A fuel tank at the depot was filled with a delivery of HVO and 5 vehicles specified to only use that tank. The consumption rate between the two fuels was compared over the same period in the previous year. The results of the trial were mixed, with three of the vehicles actually showing a slight improvement in consumption for HVO, while the remaining 2 identical vehicles showed a large increase in consumption. From further research of other organisations that have made a similar change, the increase we experience appears to be an outlier. The cost of HVO per litre has been tracked, with the price narrowing over the last 2 years. With the information gathered, the following was ascertained. The additional cost of switching from diesel to HVO is estimated to be between £39,000 and £120,000 per year, the maximum being if the outlying results are replicated. Given the amount of fuel that we purchase annually, a switch to HVO could reduce our carbon production by 1,300 tonnes per year. As the cleansing fee constitutes around 40% of TBC's carbon emissions, reducing this by around 90% would represent the best cost to benefit ratio in terms of carbon reduction. Funding for the potential £120,000 would come from the savings made by not buying electric refuse collection vehicles as has been planned. These purchases are not currently possible due to suitable vehicles not being on the market. We're currently in the process of procuring a fuel contract. This is expected to be out for procurement in the next few months. Our current provider has confirmed that they have the capability to change our supply from standard to HVO immediately. This being the case, we would be able to implement the change of fuel in August 2025. The slight delay allowing for diesel has already been delivered to be used up.
Thanks, Matt. Members, Councillor Davis first.
I think this is a phenomenal piece of work from the looks of it, and well done, Matt. The impact of this is huge, but it's what so many of us believe is the correct sort of direction in order to achieve sustainability rather than the blind pursuit of all things electric and lithium. This utilises existing stock and existing technology. There's no penalty for using it, and in fact that small additional fuel cost compared to the cost, for example, of installing and maintaining a couple of electric points over the same period of time, this is probably better value. But what it does is it means we haven't got a change of technology. It can use the diesel vehicles. Should the market change, this has got the flexibility. I mean, I'm the first to moan on many things, but I've got to say I can't see anything to object to here, and in fact I think those responsible for this should be put up for some sort of recognition, because it's exactly the type of direction we should be going down if we're going to honour our environmental credentials. So, well done.
Well done to you, Councillor Davis. Yeah. Councillor Austin.
I wonder if we could perhaps ask Emily to embolden that bit about Councillor Davis not having any criticism of this. Yeah, I thoroughly agree. It's excellent news, and well done to everybody who's involved. Can I just ask about the sort of contract that we would be taking on with a fuel supplier, and supposing there were problems, what flexibility we'd have, etc., that kind of a thing? What are we signing up to with our new contract?
The contract, the exact details of it aren't released yet, obviously, but it would be an identical type of contract to what we have now for our fuel supply, but just a stipulation that we could use HVO. In the report it says it. Another benefit of this is that if for whatever reason the price goes through the roof or there's a major issue with supply, we can just like that switch back to normal diesel. So as long as the supplier is able to provide both, then there shouldn't be an issue.
Councillor Wing.
That was future-proofing. That was sort of the thing I was going to bring up. I think this is a great thing for us to be doing. But you've answered the question that if things go pear-shaped and we can't access the HVO, then we can just switch back to diesel, which seems like and there's no adaptations to the engine have to be done at all. Maybe my camper van can run on it.
Anybody else? Wow, okay. So we have 3 recommendations in front of us that we've all asked to look at. We've all had a look, I presume. Do I have a proposer for those recommendations? Councillor Austin and a second of Councillor Scobie. We all agree? Excellent. Thanks, Matt. Okay, on to item number 9, which is the antisocial behaviour and alcohol PSPO. I knew we was going so fast.
I'm riding a wave of positive energy here. Don't ruin it for me.
Okay, item number 8. Changes to the household refuse and recycling collections. Over to you again.
Thank you, Chair. This report proposes changes to either the methodology and/or frequency of waste collections for around 27,000 properties, which is approximately a third of properties in Thanet. The reasons for these changes are twofold: to streamline and simplify the recycling, to drive efficiencies in the service with the aim to improve our recycling rate, and also to ensure compliance with 2 major pieces of waste-related legislation. The deadline for these changes to be in place is the 31st of March 2026. The basis of this proposal is an agreement with KCC, who dispose of our waste, for the properties listed above to be fully mix their recycling. This is to say that paper and card can be included with other recycling materials. Furthermore, this can be presented in clear bags, of which we will supply. The affected properties can be split into 3 distinct categories. 1, communal properties, so high-rises or houses of multiple occupancy, and any property that uses a communal bin or bins for their waste. These will see rebranding of some of their bins to fully mixed recycling and introduction of communal food waste bins and collections. 2 are the seagull sacks collections, properties that have little or no space for bins and as such present their waste in reusable bags. They also have a weekly refuse collection, with some also participating in recycling. These properties will be given a roll of clear bags to put their fully mixed recycling in. Collections will change from weekly refuse to alternate week refuse and recycling. A weekly food waste collection will be introduced, and caddies and liners will be supplied to residents. Properties with access. Number 3 are properties with access issues. So this is a mixture of property types and collections, which are all linked by being on roads which require a specific smaller vehicle to access them. The aim will be to standardise these collections for these properties, either changing to or introducing a fully mixed recycling collection, either by rebranding the current blue bin or offering the bag service. Where already not in place, a weekly food waste collection will be implemented. The remaining properties who receive a full collection will receive a full collection service, i.e. general waste, recycling bin, a separate bin for paper and card, and a food waste collection. These will experience no changes at all. The changes will take place in stages, with the communal properties starting upon the approval of this report and happening gradually up until the March deadline. Research and planning into the other 2 property types will also start in the coming months, with the changes aiming to take place in early 2026. The project will be managed by either an internal project manager or be contracted to a consultant, all at the direction of the head of service. A fully funded budget of 400k has been assigned to the project, funding coming jointly from central government and our inter-authority agreement payment from KCC. The 2 pieces of legislation that are partly driving these changes are A, the simpler recycling legislation, which mandates that all residents in England have the opportunity to recycle the same materials. Failure to comply with this could potentially see future funding being withheld from us. Secondly, the extended producer responsibility, reforms which will require an improvement in our recycling rate to ensure we are not deducted up to 20% of our expected 1.3 million allocated funding. A few points to note. It's important to remember that the amount of waste that a resident produces is not going to change by this. We are just asking for it to be presented and collected differently. Over 40% of the rubbish in our black bags is food. Separating this out will have a number of benefits. Removing the large amount of weight from the refuse stream and into the recycling stream, this will provide a double benefit for our recycling rate. This will also take away the smellier elements of the black bags, which in some cases will now have a slightly longer wait between collections. And finally, presenting food in lockable caddies as opposed to bags will help deter seagulls and other animals.
Thanks, Matt. And I know we all attended the briefing, which was very comprehensive and well presented last week, I think. So we probably haven't got too many questions to ask. Councillor Davis?
Just felt the need to comment because about Matt's positive role, because it definitely is your evening, Matt, because I think this is excellent as well. On the basis, it broadens the ability to recycle, and this is a really important point, because there are whole pockets of places where the current system hasn't been working for whatever reason. This will turn that corner, I think, in terms of volume for the area, which is much healthier for us as an authority as well. So just, yeah, no. And you owe me nothing.
If I could drop this mic, I would drop it right now.
But no, as I said, I think it's going to have some teething troubles, obviously, like anything new and that involves human beings. But I think this is a definite step forward for benefit. An analysis of people who live round myself, we've talked about this in the last week or so. Most of what we produce is actually recyclable and goes currently into mixed waste. So 90% of what comes out of our properties will immediately go into recycling. If that happens across the island on the same ratio, massive impact. A bit like the massive impact of the vegetable oil in terms of our, I think that was the thing I forgot to mention, if I may, on that. It equates to about 37% of our total emissions. That's a phenomenal saving, because it's just phenomenal. And as I say, this as well, it's a corner turning move potentially. So again, well done.
Councillor Curry.
I agree with Councillor Davis. I fully support this project. I mean, on our walkabout recently, Matt, we could see how many flats are above shops without recycling, way to recycle, using communal bins. So the more of this waste goes into recycling, the less will go into the communal bins. I would like to ask you just some clarification on the red bags. That they are quite popular with some people. Not everyone can use them. Will they be phased out for some residents and kept for some? As I say, they are quite popular with some residents.
So it would depend on where, and the actual defining factor is about what rounds collect it. So as I said, the 2/3 of the properties, many of which will have red bags or red bins, will keep them, no problem. If the ones you mention are on rounds of difficult access or seagull sack collections, we will take them away, but they will still be able to recycle their paper. It will just go in with the rest of their recycling. Is that okay?
Thank you.
Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Matt. Yes, obviously we've been talking about this in the Ramsgate Litter Forum for a while, and we're really pleased to see it happening, because we have, as you are only too well aware, many problems with various communal bins in our neck of the woods. I wanted to ask a question about the implications for staff time, because you highlight that there won't be two separate
rounds anymore, does that have a knock-on effect on how you, obviously it has a knock-on effect on how you deploy staff, but does it mean a saving in staff time? Or does it all end up the same in the end? That was my first question. I've got a couple of others if that's okay.
Our initial expectations are that it will be neutral in terms of the time it will take, and also it should be noted in terms of the amount of vehicles we were using. That the thing I'm sure Mike is absolutely sick and tired of me saying is, the thing to remember is it's the same amount of rubbish, it's just going on different vehicles now, and just getting that split right is that's my job. But yeah, so we're not creating more waste, we're just doing it in a different way.
So the next question's about the seagull bag business, because obviously we've a lot of seagull bags in Ramsgate, and we know that residents are often reluctant to take them inside, so they hang on the outsides of railings and get peed on by dogs, etc., etc. And then the residents are even more reluctant to bring them inside. I'm a little concerned that we might end up with more problems with seagull bags because of people not getting them collected so often. Obviously, the point about a lot of it being food waste is a good one, but I'm thinking about nappies and that sort of thing. Have we got any intelligence from other areas where they've done this as to what the impact has been with this type of a collection?
And yeah, I guess kind of similar to my last answer in a way, is that the frequency of collection is still going to be the same. You think about, because they're currently having a weekly refuse collection, they're still having a weekly collection, it would just be different things on each week. I get where you're coming from. Yeah, well, again, that was something we were talking about earlier, and if it was collected on a Tuesday, just to pick a day of the week, it would be unlikely that a whole new bag would go in there and on the Tuesday and be there for 2 weeks. You would think that would be an empty bin inside your house that would fill up over the next few days. So in reality, it would probably be maybe a couple of extra days that it would be out between collections, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's fine. One more. You mention about blocks of flats and about one of the things about, you're talking about dedicated bin cupboards and so on. It's on page 61, 3.7.4. And you talk about if a communal bin is required but no specific space is available, an external bin housing will be supplied. And you can imagine the horror with which we greet the prospect of extra external bin housings in Ramsgate. Can you tell us a little bit more about
Sure.
how much of that you think is likely and how it will work?
And in terms of the numbers that we need, I don't know that yet. I'm meeting with Sally next week, and we're going to kind of review them all and get a standardised answer. What I will say is that we trialled 8 communal bin housings, a couple in Ramsgate and all across Thanet, which have been an unmitigated success. Yes, they're there, they're out, and they're full of food. We're collecting them as regularly, at least once a week, sometimes more if there's an issue. But they've been really well used, and in terms of our recycling rate, getting all that food out of our black waste stream is immense. So far, so good with them.
Anybody? Councillor Wing.
Thank you. Yeah, we're really looking forward to this. Anything that increases our recycling rates has got to be a positive, because they're not very good, are they, as you acknowledged when you started, which is great. Will ward councillors be made aware of which roads and properties will be included in this? And how can we help get the message out and monitor and support the ongoing message? I mean, many of us walk around our wards, so we're constantly stopped by people with various things to tell us, most of it pleasant. And so we are an asset, we are a resource, so please use us. We want this to work as much as you want it to work, as you can see from our constant reporting on our little issue we do have. We want it to be a success, and we're here to help you get that message out and reinforce the message and help residents if they need help and point them in the right direction. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the offer of help to start with, and I couldn't agree more. We all know in terms of issues with waste collections or miscomprehensions about waste collections, it's often that the people in this room are the ones that get it first and then have to then pass it on to myself. So I couldn't agree more. I want everyone to be as fully briefed as possible. I'd hope the briefing we did on Monday was hopefully the first of many, because your support's going to be absolutely invaluable, because it's going to involve change, and change that some people might not appreciate, and it's your help will be invaluable in trying to dampen that noise, because as Councillor Davis also said, that with any change there's going to be some teething problems. For all the will in the world and for everything we can do, we're trying to stop it, but there's going to be issues, and it's a case of looking at the bigger picture and pushing on through them and getting them corrected and moving on.
And the last point to make is we hate the Paladin bins out on the highway. They generate so much antisocial fly tipping that I can't. It's the one thing that if I had a magic wand, I'd just remove them all immediately. Obviously the food waste bins, and it's good to hear that with the trial that we haven't seen that fly tipping around those bins, which is great. But again, if they're going to be placed in our wards, can you have word with the ward councillors, because very often we're aware of what's going on. We're aware of the dodgy places where things shouldn't be or things should be. Yeah, it would be really appreciated if we could at least have some input into where those potential fly tipping bins will be. But it's good to hear that it's been positive with the experiment.
Again, yeah, happy to have you involved as much as possible. Again, just to reiterate what was kind of said before, that not everyone's going to like these bins. The thing is, these bins need to go somewhere, and having them somewhere is going to get a bit of NIMBYism, because someone's not going to want it near their window or near their door. But we need to find a solution, because we can't not have them. So it also, I guess what I'm trying to get at is we require your help to help kind of get that message across.
You thought of picking locations where you can plant smelly bushes around them, so you're covering them and also trying to create a better smell.
Then no one would know they were there.
The French do it very well, actually. Their recycling places are always got beautiful hedges around them, so you don't actually see them there. And you'll find them in every village in France. So maybe that's something we can look at.
If only Tony Marmo was here, I'm sure he would agree.
Councillor Crittenden.
Thank you. I think, like everyone else, I welcome anything that improves our recycling rates. I just really wanted to pick up on one of the comments you made about the unmitigated success of the food bin and the housing. Are you aware of the queries and the criticisms over the one at Brunswick Court, where there have been allegations of an awful lot of contamination? And this is because of the location of the bin, is where picnickers tend to sit around and then dump used barbecue bits and cans and everything else into the food waste bin, because it's the nearest bin to them. I don't know how much contamination has actually gone through it. I just know how many comments I've had from some residents within that block. So are you aware of that, and can you got any comment on it?
I have been made aware of that, and in terms of success, the amount of food recycling that we've got from it has been unmitigated. I should have tempered that with there has been teething problems with this, like there is with most things. I'm working with Sally and the TLS team at the moment to try and get the message out there again, to try and educate people further about using the bin properly. I'm not. I hear what you say about the location of it, and that if people are picnicking there, it's trying to find a balance of a bin that's visible and for all people to see, to use properly, for those that want to use it properly, and balancing that off against people that don't want to see it there or are using it for the wrong purposes.
If I can just come back briefly, I understand that an awful lot of the contamination is not coming from residents, but rather from people who are using the grounds or passing by. There's, you know, low-level fencing. It's easy to walk in. It's a bin. Just dump it, rather than residents. So that's particularly where I'm coming from with the location as well. So thank you.
So, and thank you. And a bit like the other bins that we placed out that caused some concerns, one thing we're always keen to do is listen to feedback from residents and yourselves about siting of these bins and any other bins. And if moving them will get a better result, then we're happy to shift them within reason. Obviously, we can't move them 5 miles away because we need them in situ to make sure we get the recycling.
The keen recyclers of Brunswick Court would love you to move their bin, and they know exactly where they want it. We won't do that now.
I was going to say, I'll happily, if I can come down and visit there and we can work something out.
You want to come back, John?
Thank you, Chair. Just a query about the food caddies. Are these going to be the same as the food caddies that were issued previously, with the smaller silver one for indoors and the brown collection caddy, or are they going to be a different model?
Do you mean in terms of the make or the production of them, or just the general size? I mean, that
design size.
That's the general idea, that you have a smaller one for your kitchen counter and a larger one for outside. Yeah,
an amalgamated one for collection.
Yeah.
Just one of those random questions.
Okay, we all done? Right, so we have a whole long list of recommendations, which I'm sure you've all looked at. Do I have a proposer, please? Councillor Davis, and a seconder, Councillor Curry, and do we all agree? Excellent, thanks, Matt. And obviously a complex issue with a complex solution, so let's hope it all works. Okay, moving on to item number 9, which is the antisocial behaviour and alcohol PSPO. Please could the panel refer to the report and Annex 4 in the supplementary agenda. These replace the report and Annex in the main agenda, as they contain a letter from Kent Police and Crime Commissioner and the Council's response to the Police and Crime Commissioner. So I'll call on Ingrid to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for confirming. Shall I nick your... Thank you, Chair, and thank you for confirming the position in relation to there being 2 reports. So there's an update report because we got a late response to the consultation from the Police and Crime Commissioner, and the report in the supplementary agenda is the same, but it addresses the points made by the Police and Crime Commissioner. So that's the report to focus on. But this report is being brought to OSP to consider the recommendations being made to Cabinet in respect of the proposed PSPO, which is to address antisocial behaviour, drugs and alcohol use in the areas of Broadstairs, Margate, Westgate and Ramsgate. Cabinet is being asked to consider the evidence base for each of the 7 proposed restrictions in the PSPO, as well as the results of consultation in relation to each proposed restriction. Councillors will see from the report that officers have gathered evidence from Chief Inspector Swallow, who is kindly here in attendance today, and also from ward councillors across the political spectrum in respect of the incidents of antisocial behaviour in the area. Having done so, the proposed order was drafted, and then in accordance with statutory provisions, a comprehensive consultation was carried out. The extent of that consultation is set out at paragraph 5.2.1 of the report, but councillors will see that this included all the statutory consultees, as well as pretty much all of the voluntary groups in the areas. The results of consultation are annexed to this report, and they demonstrate that for the most part, there was really overwhelming support for each of the restrictions. Councillors will also see, however, that some concerns have been expressed about the restrictions, and these are set out in the report together with a response to each of these concerns. Councillors will see that most concern has been expressed about the proposed restriction in relation to the use of foul or abusive language that is likely to cause harassment, alarm or distress. Rather alarmingly, this restriction has been portrayed by some as an attempt to fine people for swearing. Clearly that is not the case, and were it to be so, my own position in the council would be completely untenable. The restriction is designed, rather, to prevent the type of antisocial behaviour that councillors will see in the comments from the consultation at Appendix 5, as well as in the witness statements of ward councillors and Chief Inspector Ian Swallow. And if I can refer councillors to the relevant section of Appendix 5 and read from it a couple of quotes in response to the consultation in this matter. So these are just a few of those. Ramsgate town is full of people abusing shop staff, gangs of kids shouting abuse at passers-by, people shouting foul language during the middle of the day happens every day. It's a problem as it's very aggressive and intimidating. Foul and abusive language directed in a manner towards another person or persons is again all too common in Ramsgate and is mainly committed by a small number of people who have a disproportionate and negative impact on us, not just the victim. This is not about stopping freedom of speech, it is about being appropriate and how the words are used. Shouting offensive language in front of small kids and families makes people feel unsafe. Councillors should also know, and no doubt have, that the detail of the Police and Crime Commissioner's response to the consultation. He offers support for the PSPO generally, but states, I do not believe that the police or council should be in the business of regulating what should be considered matters of free speech or expression. Existing legislation deals with intent to cause fear, alarm and distress when it is necessary and proportionate to do so. In the supplementary agenda and in the report that I've referred to, I've responded to his concerns. It is the case, for example, that Section 5 of the Public Order Act 1986 offers a similar provision, but this is only available to police officers to enforce. In any event, the proposed restriction does not seek to replicate or replace existing criminal offences, but to provide an additional proportionate tool for managing location-specific, lower-level antisocial behaviour where the statutory test under Section 59 is met. And this leads me on to the statutory test. In relation to each proposed restriction, councillors must, as officers have, and indeed I have, consider the test as set out in Section 59 of the Antisocial Behaviour, Crime and Policing Act 2014. And this provides that a PSPO can prohibit certain activities where they have had or are likely to have a detrimental effect on the quality of life of those in the locality, and where they are likely to be persistent or continuing in nature and are unreasonable. And please note that each of the restrictions provides for a reasonable excuse defence, and obviously the restrictions must be proportionate. To add, not referenced in the report, that the courts have considered the issues of abusive and insulting words in cases related to the Section 5 public order offence, and courts have held that even commonplace expletives may still be regarded as abusive and insulting depending on the context. The fact that language is commonplace does not negate its potential to cause distress, particularly where used aggressively or persistently. I'm obviously happy to take any questions on the report, and I'm very grateful to Chief Inspector Ian Swallow for attending OSP today, indeed for all of his insistence in evidence gathering for this PSPO. He's certainly in a better position than I am to answer questions in relation to the types of and frequency of antisocial behaviour in the areas covered by the order, but I'm happy to take any other questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Ingrid. And I will come to Ian. Did you want to come in and say anything at this point?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. I don't intend to add an awful lot to what Ingrid has just pointed out. I mean, you would have all received the statement, it's in the pack that I wrote a while ago in relation to supporting the PSPO. Just quickly, in relation to the observations raised by the Police and Crime Commissioner, I think it is also important to add that the PCC office have their own opinion, and that is at the moment separate from Kent Police's opinion. The Kent Police have operational responsibility for all policing, and that comes from the Office of the Chief Constable, which is our response. The Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner hold Kent Police to account for all of their policing activity. So it is the police's position that we support all elements of this PSPO still. I think that's important to point that out. But equally, as has been previously discussed, we are equally open to the second interpretation, the second pack that you've got, because from our opinion, it is far more important to get this over the line than it is to quote the vernacular, to die in a ditch over one or two specific things that people are unhappy about. I would suggest that the implementation of a PSPO will not only assist policing, it will assist our partners in improving the quality of ASB provision that we have in the district. And I will end on saying I think you only need to look at what's happened in the district over the last 2 to 3 weeks as perfect examples of the sort of stuff that we need to be tackling. So as Chair said, I'm happy to answer any questions at all that you may have.
Thanks, Ian. Indicate if you want to come in at any point, but I'll open it to the floor. Members. Councillor Packman.
Yeah, thank you to Joanna and yourself and Ingrid for working on this, because I think there was a large amount of frustration that this wasn't implemented the first time round, but I do understand why it wasn't, and we've seen the consequence of that. I wouldn't say the incident happened because we didn't have a PSPO, but it certainly made your jobs a lot easier. The only question I do have is, if we implement this PSPO through Cabinet, do you have the resources to be able to respond? And this is to the Council and to the Kent Police. Do you have the resources to actually implement this? Because it's all good and well having the PSPO, but do we have the resource to be implementing this?
In short, I'd love to say we've got thousands of police officers on the street. We don't. But what we have done over the last few weeks is dipped into the availability of Kent Police to what we call surge. So we recognise a problem and we move resources to that problem, and we spend money if we need to do so. So on week one of all the nightmare that happened over in Broadstairs and Margate and what have you, we probably didn't have enough resources that weekend because we were operating under normal policing numbers. But what we were able to do, and I think it's been seen across the district, weekend 2, weekend 3, we've had loads of coppers on the street. But that's because the force reacted and moved our resources elsewhere. So as a force, yes, we have enough resources. What this then does is give us another piece of that toolkit, because if you take the Public Order Act, for example, that's a sledgehammer to crack what could be a very small nut. We have Section 34 dispersals, which is probably below a PSPO, because all that does is give us the power to disperse people. Where this would sit was right in the middle. And the important part for us is actually, and it addresses your point, Councillor, around whether we have enough resources, it then gives us another small army of people in our partners who are able then to use that enforcement capability when my officers are dealing with, let's say, the higher level stuff. So it gives you that bigger ability to deal with what we're trying to deal with.
That's brilliant. That's exactly the kind of answer that I was looking for. My only plea to you now, and this is to Council and to Kent Police, is when this goes live, can we really hit hard on this? Because again, I think the public, if you go into Margate High Street, they're petrified. They are absolutely petrified, and I think, I'd rather go in hard on this and then ease off, because it sends a message to people that we're not accepting antisocial behaviour or violence against women or whatever the problem is. So my plea to you is, can we go hard on this?
In short, yes. I will quote the Chief Constable in a meeting that has been had recently around our town uplifts, and this is a government push towards improving the policing response in town centres, which is why we've got extra town centre police officers coming on board. The Chief Constable of Kent says he wants to take back the town centres of Kent from exactly this type of behaviour. That's my plan, and that's what we would use this for.
Thank you very much. Councillor Scobie.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Packman said he understood the reasons why the PSPO wasn't adopted the first time, and I have to say, while I agree with you, I think it is still a pretty shameful sort of indictment of we as a panel, that we, members of this panel, worked with external organisations to try and stop that from happening. And the impact on our residents has been clear from presentation that Mr Swallow gave at the last overview and scrutiny meeting and the evidence that's included in this. So I hope we're not going to have any shenanigans tonight. I hope that we can agree to support this cross-party and make sure that the police are given additional protections. And I just wanted to also comment on the letter from the Police Crime Commissioner, because I note having looked at other councils in Kent, Dartford, for example, has almost identical language in terms of their PSPO, and the Police Crime Commission had no issue sending a letter that unanimously supported it. And I wonder what the main difference between Thanet and Dartford is, and I wonder if it is the colour of the control of that council. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to go back to where I was because I don't think relevant. It's irrelevant what colour a council is. This is about the people, and as we've said all the way through, we welcome the principle of the PSPO and understand the support that it can give to the police. Let's just put a lid on before. It was not fit for purpose in the format it was written in. The correct action has been taken, and thank you to the monitoring officer and all those concerned. So let's stop politicking about this and start getting down to what it's really there for. What I have learned recently is how it can support the actions of the police. What it mustn't be is a tool to, in effect, do your job for you. And I mean that in no way to insult you. If it broadens the enforcement capabilities and the management capabilities of that behaviour, then it's got to be a good thing. And there are concerns, obviously, in terms of the violence to women and children. It's very difficult. The problem is to establish a threshold as to what becomes distressing to somebody, because one person will brush off water off a duck's back what another person is highly offended by. So. But there's never going to be an answer to that. It has to be the discretion of the individuals dealing with it in context. But I think it has to be said that... Sorry.
Just on that, there's a legal objective test, so it's of the reasonable person. So it's not somebody that might be quite fragile or oversensitive. It's a legal objective test.
Thanks, Ingrid, because, as I say, so there is, in effect, some form of benchmark there. I've got to say, and I want it on the record, that we utterly, utterly welcome this if it adds to the protection for our residents. And as we've said, there's absolutely no justification for the levels of behaviour that some of the youth went to the other week. One of the concerns I do have, and I think I'm possibly echoing Councillor Packman, is how well resourced and how long it will take to train relevant officers, because this is a pretty diplomatic job. It's, you know, it will require skills that other departments don't have. Are we concerned about recruiting those? Because we had trouble, for instance, with parking wardens because of confrontational situations. Are we going to face that same resourcing issue here? Because if so, I think there needs to be action taken to make that role more attractive to people. Otherwise, as Councillor Packman said, we're achieving very little in terms of delivery here. So that's a question, I guess, to the council side of things. But as I say, I wanted it on the record that we're not confrontational and we totally support this, but it has to be in a format that's fit for purpose for everyone's benefit.
Absolutely. Chair, can I just make a further point to sort of expand on Ingrid's point around that legal test? I'm 100% with you, Councillor, on this, and it's really important that everybody understands what that reasonable person test is. It's applied across dozens of pieces of legislation, and that reasonable person is set in law. So if, for example, a member of the public is provided with a fixed penalty notice for breaching element of this PSPO and they fundamentally disagree, an example given in the consultation would have been around peaceful protest. So if an officer, be it a police officer or a council appointed officer, gave a fine, a ticket for a breach of PSPO and that person fundamentally disagreed with it, that's where the appeal process comes in. And that's the beauty of our legal system, quite frankly, because it then is tested in a court of law against the statutory level of what a reasonable person would be. And that would either be, you know, I mean, nothing's going to go to Crown Court, but it's based upon that Crown Court level of what a jury of 11 people would decide is reasonable. And there are dozens and dozens and dozens of examples set in law that will set that bench out. It's, you know, there's a famous piece of legislation about the person on the omnibus, which is the average person in the street, and that is what it's set at. So it won't be someone who has worked on oil rigs for 50 years and is used to some language, and it won't be little old lady, Mrs. Miggins, who's never heard a swear word and would be really, really frightened by anything. It is set at a very, very prescriptive benchmark. And the important part is that that's where that appeals process comes in. So it won't be carte blanche issuing of tickets for people peacefully protesting or for being on the beach swearing at their mates, you know, or being outside a pub on the seafront and the language starts getting fruity. It's not there for that.
No, really appreciate that, Ian, and thank you for that. As I say, it's and it's good to know that there is that definitive threshold, if you like, so that we can settle other people, because again, a lot of the time when we react in here, it's because people have spoken to us as representatives. So, and I'm pleased to say we've had no approach from any organisation questioning this, so with which I'll shut up.
Councillor Reid.
Oh, I'm going to start by thank you for the presentation. I'm going to start by saying I'm sorry. I'm really sorry that the police force and our community safety team were left without the necessary tools to take action against a lot of low-level antisocial behaviour. And I want to thank you for continuing to try and do the best you possibly can without that tool. I think we left you in a canoe without a paddle, actually, is my feeling. And residents and ward councillors, and I'm sure yourselves, have witnessed firsthand the increase in antisocial behaviour that we've witnessed. I can, Broadstairs, but I can give you lots of testimonies about what's been going on in Ramsgate. And the only thing I can link it to is the fact we've lacked a PSPO, and we've lacked that particular series of tools that you could use to knock back that low-level behaviours that we're seeing constantly in a number of places in Ramsgate. St George's, the town centre, Charlotte Court, Albert Court, Albion Gardens, if I missed one, Ellington Park. And you just haven't had the tools necessary at your disposal to take action. So I'm going to say sorry and thank you for trying to do what you're doing. I mean, I can give you some examples. Maybe this will hit hard with Councillor Davis. In the last 4 weeks, 2 of my friends have been beaten up in the town. The police are dealing with it, thank God. I witnessed a young person who's a vulnerable person. I followed a man. He got a dog chain out and whipped the other guy round the legs. This was all broad daylight. All broad daylight. I've never ever witnessed that walking about doing my, there's always a street drinkers there, but it's sort of ratchet up to a completely another level. And I guess similar councillors are seeing the same in their towns and areas. People are. We set up Ramsgate Crime Stoppers, and the good thing that's come out of that is we're sharing intelligence, but we've set up a group that none of us feel alone. We're tackling this together. So all I can say is that residents want this to be resolved as well. We've tried to remove phone boxes, so areas that create situations. I really look forward to this. I think it's absolutely tragic that we've not had it. It hasn't helped our town centres and areas where there is antisocial behaviour. And I agree that we need to, once this is in, we need to have a sustained period of enforcement. The message needs to be sent out. Again, councillors are here to help send that message out. Residents will send that message out as well. And then we do need to in a multi-agency approach, police, TDC and other partners, to hit the ground running and hard, in a sense, to try and get things back to normal. And we've developed great relationships, particularly with the police in Ramsgate. So I'd just like to thank you for having to cope over this period of time, and I can't wait for the PSPO to be back. Thank you.
Councillor Cohen.
Chair, I fully support the revised PSPO, but I would like to comment on a recent article by Kent Online that implied that the police would give out fines and for people swearing, and as you've made clear, Ian and you, Ingrid, that is not the case. I found the article irresponsible, not very helpful, and in fact could cause some antisocial behaviour. So I just would like the journalist and the editors to think carefully about writing an article like this on such an important issue, and think twice before releasing something that could cause problems. Thank you.
I agree with that, and I think the Kent Online has gone to this clickbait where you've got to pay now, and I think they're trying to create a sensational headline there, which is rehashed from last year, and I think that it was irresponsible. I had an email from a resident about it as well. So, anybody else? Councillor Wynne?
I'd just like to add, it is quite interesting that we don't have the freedom of speech representative sat here looking at how this has progressed. It would have been interesting for him to actually be here.
Councillor Austin?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to echo what's been said. I think this is a great piece of work and I'm really looking forward to it coming in. I've had emails from residents about noise, about noisy neighbours and this kind of thing, and asking whether this can be included in the PSPO or whether it is included or whether there's a separate sort of legislation that deals with that, you know, people playing karaoke machines out in the street over the summer and those kinds of things. Is that an entirely separate matter, or might that come within the scope of this type of arrangement?
I mean, noise can be a nuisance. This PSPO doesn't specifically cover, certainly doesn't cover music or noisy neighbours per se. It might be that their conduct falls within, but it's a public spaces protection order, so it concerns public spaces as opposed to any private. Okay, yeah, but out on the street, but certainly it doesn't concern music being played in the street. That's not covered. It's not to say that that's something, if there was an evidenced issue, that was something that other authorities have got PSPOs that prevent the playing of loud music publicly, but that's not something that we've progressed. It's separate yet.
Anybody? Oh, sorry, Councillor Bright.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for your work on this PSPO. It's been a long journey, and we've certainly suffered the effects in Broadstairs. So the implementation of it can't come soon enough. I'm interested to understand the timeline of this. I think once it goes through Cabinet, how quickly will it be enforceable? Will it be up and running for the summer holidays? We've got a few more days. The other thing is the issues in Broadstairs. I know largely we're down to local kids, but also from kids coming out of area on the train, and I'm wondering whether British Transport Police are included as enforcers of the PSPO in these areas, or whether or not. I don't know. And also I'm assuming there will be new signage going up in our parks and open spaces about this PSPO that will also be shared with schools in the new term. But can it also go up at train stations, and is there any way of communicating to kids down the line in Medway and Sittingbourne and Swale that there is a PSPO in place in Thanet, to maybe make them think twice before they come here? Thank you.
If I can provide you some reassurance around South Eastern and BTP, we've worked with them quite a bit, and we've worked with them even closer since the issues happened in Broadstairs. I'll give you an example. The week following the incidents in Broadstairs, we got intelligence come through that about 150 people were coming to Margate Beach, and this was in midweek. About 80 people did come, and then we had intel that there was about 150 coming, with the intent on causing a lot of problem. Not a single one of those people stepped on Margate Beach, because we had them stopped at Stratford by BTP and South Eastern. South Eastern enforced the rail restriction orders that they have in place to stop people travelling. They made that train a dry train, which meant no alcohol was allowed on the train, and BTP stopped them coming on board. So we're already in a very close working relationship now going into the summer to prevent that. South Eastern are now putting extra staff at all the train stations, especially Broadstairs, which is the neglected of the three, really. So we're on board with them to sort of. That was a bit of a pun, wasn't it, really? My apologies. But the second part of that is, yes, they have the power to issue tickets and to enforce the PSPO as a warranted officer. British Transport Police are not a Home Office force, but they are warranted officers, and therefore they will have the power to issue this. And yes, we will go far and wide with our advertising of it in schools, on the trains, and up the line, literally up the line, to say if you're coming to Thanet, this order is in place. The plan being is to get signage put on the trains, you know, the signs you get at the end of carriages that will highlight the good things you can do in Thanet, and Joanna and her team and I are working on that to have sort of an advertising, so the My Night Out app, etc., all the good stuff, but also to say if you're coming and you want to cause problems, this is what you could be facing. So yes, that is the plan.
Thank you, that's really good news, thank you.
Just to add to that, the legislation actually requires that we publish notices in the affected areas. So in all the relevant areas that the restrictions apply to, we must put up signage, and we'll have a plan for that after the implementation of the order.
And obviously that signage will be very appealing to young people, attractive, you know, to people, so they actually read it rather than just words on a page. Visual.
Councillor Wing?
Could I just back Joanne up, Councillor Bright, on the signage? In Ramsgate, the signage is very confusing. I think there's at least 3 different styles of signage. So it would be really useful if we're starting this afresh to maybe, we might have to wait a bit longer, but to make sure our signage is out. We've been very good as a council in redesigning some of our logos. So I think it's really important that we try to remove the various signs we've got up and make sure we've got a standard sign that exists across the whole of Thanet.
I mean, I'm not sure how that bit works, but what I do know, and it's thanks to Marvia and the comms team, the signage and for the consultation was absolutely excellent. I think it was really clear. People were able to respond really comprehensively. And I'm not sure, Joanna, you or Penny might be able to answer how we go about designing signage going forward. I'm not sure, but I mean, if it was based on the kinds of things that we used for the consultation, that was really clear, and it was clear that people were able to respond effectively to that and got the message.
It would be working with comms. Like Ingrid said, the post that went out advertising the PSPO coming in place was really clear, and we would have something very, very similar to that. Once it's all printed, we'll get it out as well to schools. We may do schools slightly differently, a little bit more appealing, I think. We need to do that slightly differently.
Councillor Davis?
I think, I mean, I agree with everything everyone's saying about promoting this, but the thing that we can do, I think, to help create a better culture and environment, and it is cultural, is to make sure, and we've discussed this recently, we're promoting the family-friendly aspects of Thanet, and that the marketing of Thanet and events in Thanet reflect that. Because unfortunately, there's a side effect, for instance, of some of the, especially more sensationalised reporting on things, because there's an element in society that it's an advert to them to say, great, we'll go and play up there then. So we can help ourselves by not promoting the gig, big event, party promotion side of things, as opposed to perhaps showing a bit more of a balanced view of Thanet and promoting the family-friendly elements of it. So we've all got a part we can play to helping this on an ongoing basis. And as I say, it has no bearing on whether we vote for this. We're going to vote for it, I'm sure. But it's still something I think could be brought into the mix in terms of just getting that. Because, you know, we were all young and liked a few sherbets at one time and grew up locally. The one thing you didn't want was to be in the spotlight of everyone else's mum, uncle and everything else that would spot you doing it. So consequently, by highlighting the family-friendly activity side of things, it puts people off going out for that. Just a thought.
Okay. Councillor Scobie.
You're probably there anyway, Chair, but I was just going to say I propose that we move the recommendation, in particular that we agree the PSPO as drafted, and recommend that to Cabinet.
Thank you. That's a proposer. Do we have a seconder for those? And we are asked to invite to make recommendations. So have we, apart from probably expedite this as quick as possible, it's probably the biggest recommendation we can make. Are we all okay then? We all agree with the recommendations? Excellent. Thank you. And thanks, Ian. Thanks, Ingrid. And thanks, Joanna. And moving on to item number 10, which is the forward plan and exempt cabinet reports list. And I always ask this, unless there's something from the panel Wish to consider the last note report, but I know I'm going to get a question from Councillor Ryan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Is there any chance of an update on the situation regarding the consultation regarding the travellers' site in my ward in Garlench? We're still waiting for the outcome of that.
Okay. Is that in your department, Bob? Consultation on the? I know it's in progress.
Yes, it is. I have emailed Councillor Wall directly about the question that you raised with me. We will be bringing a report forward in either September or October.
The Cabinet. I think we've done it here, haven't we? We've done
well, no,
is it coming back
the
here?
report that goes to Cabinet will come
come
here
back
as
here.
well. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. There you go.
Thank you. So we've got to wait then before we, my constituent. Okay. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Chair.
The weeks are flying past. Any more comments? Okay, we ask to note the report. Okay, and that concludes the business for tonight's meeting. I thank everyone for coming, and I declare this meeting closed at 8:24. Thanks very much.